Hello YouTube. In today's video, I'm going to discuss a topic that I have discussed on stream a few times, and I thought it would be good so I could go more in depth and hopefully give a better explanation on the topics. Within Apex, there is two forms of playstyles that you can have. You can have either proactive playstyle or a reactive playstyle. A proactive playstyle is assessing the information that you have and then making an offensive play based off that information provided to you. A reactive playstyle is assessing the information that you have, then making a defensive play based off that. They are sort of the same thing, except one of them is you take an aggressive route to winning, and the other one is you take more of a defensive route. A huge part behind proactive gameplay is understanding win conditions and how to achieve them, and on the other hand, a huge part behind reactive plays are that they are consistent, holding power positions, playing god spots in zone, taking safe fights, taking low risk, high reward situations. At the highest level of play, the vast majority of players will typically use a proactive playstyle, even in ranked. Although there are still very high level players that do utilize a reactive playstyle, the issue is that a reactive playstyle can only get you so far. By properly understanding proactive decisions in Apex, you can turn yourself into a player that can use both of these archetypes, which is in my opinion one of the most important things to learn. The beauty behind proactive decisions are that you're not just inting fights, you're taking educated fights based off risk and reward, and that if you're good enough at the game, will mostly work out in your favor. This is why I always fight for it. Reactive playstyles, which is reacting to what the enemy team does, sure you can sit there and you can get better with that playstyle. You can have a high win rate, you can climb ranks, you can do all these things, but when you can properly utilize proactive decisions, then you can choose when to be proactive versus reactive. You don't have to sit there and one trick a certain playstyle and feel an obligation to do things a certain way. This makes it so that if you do some games reactive and some games proactive based off the situation that you're in, then you can actually sit there and maximize the amount of games that you can win given the circumstances that you're in. There are many ways to win a game in Apex. Apex is a game where there are thousands of Legends combinations, thousands of potential zones and fight sequences. Let's say you give early perp armors and you see a team is holding a power position on blues. You have an easier time taking that fight, which has a high probability of winning you the game if successful. I'll actually give you an example, right? Let's say, for example, you need to push a team up here in gazebo, right? There is a full team holding this gazebo and you need to push them, right? They have blue armors. They've been sitting here all game waiting for opportunities to happen, okay? They're holding zone. They're just playing good position. Let's say you came from this side of the map and you've cleared out the teams and you have purple armor, you have good attachments, you're coming in from edge, right? In this case, let's say you're here and you need to push them. A reactive player would wait for opportunities to happen for this team to have an opportunity to be pushed. For example, they're not paying attention, maybe their backs are turned, maybe they're getting pushed by a different team, maybe they're out focused on different things, roaming, etc., right? Whereas a proactive team would take advantage of the opportunity they have, which is that they have an advantage and that they can take a fight on this team with an advantage. They would use util to prevent certain angles from being taken. They would try and force them into a position where they're at such a disadvantage that they can take advantage of it and proactively set the pacing of the fight and actually control the fight. A good example of this would be like, for example, if you bang smoke the height here in this case, right? Or if you pathy sip the height, or if you crypto AMP them, right? You are creating an advantage out of thin air that you can now capitalize on and punish this team even more if you're just kind of holding this position because you have such a huge advantage, right? There's multiple examples of this, of places you can do this and situations you can do this, right? So when you're sitting there and using proactive decisions properly and you've like mastered it, right? You can win infinitely more games than you would be able to by just reacting to things constantly. The reason being is that with all these hundreds of ways to win a game, if you're always taking kind of a defensive route and you're not pressuring your enemy and you're only ever really punishing their mistakes, you will eventually get into a game where the enemy team does not make a mistake. And if they don't make mistakes, you're kind of just sitting there waiting to lose, if that makes sense, right? So that's why you always want to sit there and assess situations, look for opportunities of things you can do, find ways you can maximize the value of your utility, the team states around you. Does this team have lower armors than you? Did they burn all their ults? Are they getting punished by different teams around them? Samples, all these different kind of things that you can access and look for opportunities proactively of things you can do, right? The highest level players are able to assess the whole map. They're able to look at what their teammates are offering them in terms of utility. They're able to sit there and use what their teammates offer them for their advantage, and that's how you can win the most amount of games, by consistently knowing what opportunities you have to take and what you can versus can't do in each moment. I'm going to of course have people who say, MG, doesn't your playstyle kind of rely on teammates? And admittedly, yes it does. But the thing that you have to understand is that Apex and Battle Royale games are a team game. You're only a third of your team, and at the end of the day, if you have teammates who are bad, or losing consistently, you're never going to win that game by sitting there, forsaking everything and waiting for something to happen to react to. In situations like these, you're going to have to bite the bullet and attempt to help your team by making decisions that they can react of, or by playing off them. An example of this would be whenever I dropped back-to-back 4K solo queuing, I consistently tried to force plays that punished enemies for bad positioning, which was a low risk, high reward fight for me. I always tried to increase my advantage by playing Revenant or using good weapons or getting an Evo advantage, seeing what advantages I had going into the fight. How can I get space? What team is in the worst position? How can I punish them? These are all things that I'm proactively doing, even when I solo queue, to try and reduce my chances of losing. Apex is an ever-evolving game, which means that your teammates will always be different. The meta will consistently change. The weapon meta will always be changing. It really is like you're playing the game as a whole versus just one singular role. This is especially important when you free stack, as you can learn what your teammates are capable of. This makes it easier to play off them and make proactive decisions. You know what they are capable of in each moment, right? You know what their legends are. Do they main certain legends? You can take advantage of that because you know what their legends can do. This is the best way to master decision making, because if you can sit there and master proactive decision making to a level where you can understand risk and reward, when is a good idea to take certain fights, when is a good idea to roam and look for information of what's going on around you, when is it better to loot for longer, when is it better to rotate earlier versus later, when is it better to force fights, when do you need to death ball certain situations, right? This is something that you can learn by constantly making proactive decisions, because you're sort of limit testing in a sense, and you can keep growing your knowledge of the game because it's an ever learning role. You will have an infinite skill ceiling in the proactive playstyle, right? Whereas if reactive, the skill ceiling is kind of based on what your opponents do and if they make mistakes. I'm a big advocate for proactive playstyles. The issue with proactive playstyles is that you throw games sometimes, especially me. I throw games sometimes by being greedy. I have an ego. I make the wrong decisions. And then these things fuck up my game and they'll cause me to lose, right? But this is because I'm still learning, right? I'm not perfect at this. But what I'm actually saying is, if you actually commit yourself to learning this playstyle, you're in an ever-evolving role where every mistake is just a lesson. It's not just a mistake because, oh, this team inted me in this position for no reason, right? Prevent this by being proactive, by holding more space. I'll give you another example of this actually, right? Let's say, for example, I'm holding the top of Barrow, right? Up here. This is a really common hold, especially in zones of Barrow, right? I could have one teammate sit here and look around. I could have one teammate sit here and look these different directions. I could have one team sit here, look this direction. You could also have a teammate, if it's especially in ranked where there's not a lot of teams around, you can play down here. You can look for information, see what's going on. And that means that if a team tries to push to this building, you're actually being fed information faster, which means that you can be aware of this. And it means that when you have to switch to a reactive playstyle, you have more information to play that playstyle, right? There will be moments where teams make stupid decisions, and in these moments, by just sitting there and being reactive, like I said, you have maybe a 10 or 20% chance of actually winning in this situation. For example, if the team get to this little sip and they wait for an opportunity, let's say they sit there for 10 minutes straight, right, in zone, and they wait for one of you two to get knocked and they sip up. If you don't get knocked because you know they're there proactively, that means that team cannot do anything because they'll never have an opportunity. That goes back to what I said about reactively, where if you don't make mistakes, the team that's playing reactive don't get to play the game. So once again, where before maybe you had a lower chance of winning because you didn't have this information, now you do. So by being proactive, you can position yourself in ways to prevent these situations from happening by holding more space or being more aware of your surroundings beforehand. And one of the main reasons why I love this playstyle so much is by actively playing the game, you can deny other teams around you from playing the game. And it makes it so you're playing the game first, whereas other teams don't get to play the game as much. You're the one to impact the game, impact the teams around you. I want to make this very clear. You can't do this every game. You're limited by what your teammates offer you. Even if you're in a free stack, what your teammates' legends are, how can you prevent certain things. You're limited by what sort of advantages you have in each situation. But when you can use this to your advantage, right, it literally is the most broken playstyle in the game, as most teams are unable to react to it, especially in the lower to middle ranks and even up in the higher ranks in Apex. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any questions below, let me know in the comments and I'll try and answer them as best as I can. And I hope you guys enjoy. See you guys later.